Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are, another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. We don't have a full start right now. We don't have a full start. We started the podcast 10 minutes ago and we shut it off. We were only on for 8 seconds.
Yeah, it was really short. It was good though, Bill. It was really good.
Yeah. I can't do anything in 8 seconds, especially talk. I can't talk 8 minutes, never mind 8 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. So podcast number 319. Here is the title of today's podcast. A surprising and obvious new discovery on what keeps rookies poor in creative real estate.
Ooh.
Here's the description. A strange story. A lobster, when left high and dry among the rocks, has not the instinct nor the energy to work his way back to the sea, but waits for the sea to come to him. He remains where he is and dies even though the slightest effort would enable him to reach the sea waves and bring him back to life, which perhaps is mostly only feet away from life or death. I tell you this story today because I feel too many rookies are like this lobster and wait for the deal to come to them, or perhaps only a foot or two away from having real success. In this simple podcast, we're going to talk about what do most rookies do instinctively to kill themselves and how to prevent it. Even turn things around so it all works and those big deals start rolling in and freedom increases. The world of rookie lobsters getting killed on the rocks ends today. I plan to get each one back to the amazing sea of life where each can flourish and prosper as much or as little as they want to in the next 60 minutes.
Okay. My first question, which is completely useless and nothing to do with helping anybody, is how the hell do you know such weird stuff like the lives of lobsters when they won't move? How do you know that?
I read a lot.
Boy, you bought a book about lobsters. Okay. Oh,
so JR, the best way to JR is asking the best way to go about getting a real estate license for someone with no prior experience. So JR, I can't help you. I don't have a realtor license, so I don't know how to do that. Which brings me to the housekeeping type activities here. So if you go into the description of this podcast, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, there's a link in there that has, that's what I meant to say, tools that you can use during this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we record every single Thursday morning. Or almost every single Thursday morning. We've done it. This is our 319th time, so there have been times in there where we've changed things, but most every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you go to Facebook or YouTube, you can just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and you can watch us. Actually, Twitter too, but we don't get too many people watching us on Twitter. And you could actually, just like JR just did, you can ask us a question. We will answer it. And JR, I'm sorry I was so curt with that, but I don't have a realtor license, so I'm not sure how to get one. What I would do is just talk to a local realtor and ask them what to do, and they'll help you. Okay. So, so we record every Thursday mornings, 9:30 a.m. You can go to YouTube or Facebook, and you can just type in Flipping Houses for Rookies and you can find us there and ask questions. The other thing is, if you would just subscribe to our channel wherever you're watching us so that when we pop up, you know we're live and you can listen. And then, of course, if you it, please give us a review, good, bad, or indifferent, so we know what we're doing right or wrong, so we can continue to do it or stop doing it or tell you to go to hell. Whoa, did those words come out of my mouth? All right, so let's go. It's definitely Bill's Planet when you're here, so that's for sure. So
Yep.
let's start the podcast. So here we go. Pete,
Bill.
today I would like to concentrate on results or lack of.
Yeah.
Kind of occurred to me that, I do this with my coaching clients all the time. It's like, what are the results? We tend to get away from it quite a bit, but we always have to reel back into what are the results.
Well, yeah. What are you doing it for? Hello.
And in total Bill style, I'd like to start off with definition.
That's good.
So most think of the definition of result as a consequence, effect, or outcome of something.
Mm-hmm.
Or more simply, the end of an action.
Okay.
Like cause and effect.
Sure.
Type of thing, right? But not today. Because there's more than one definition of result.
Must be. I'm wondering which one you want to use.
But I would like to. Right. So what I want to use is this definition instead.
Mm-hmm.
An item of information obtained by experiment or some other scientific method. A quantity or formula obtained by calculation.
Okay.
So I'm going to read it again. An item of information obtained by experiment or some other scientific method. A quantity or formula obtained by calculation.
Okay.
So just because, I don't want to make you look like a dumbass here like I normally am, but what's the difference between those two definitions, Peter? What's common? What did you see there between the first one and the second one? Anything strike out to you?
Yeah, well, yeah, let me see. I'm glad you read it again, because by the time you got to the end of the first definition, what did it start? So the first part was like information you get as a result of doing things. So that's information. What was the second one again?
So an item of information obtained by experiment or some other scientific method.
So, and the first one said information too?
And then it says a quantity or formula obtained by calculation.
Well, the first one, the result is really information. And the second one is a quantity.
And so let me help you. So the first definition, what most people think is a consequence, effect, or outcome of something.
Yeah.
So the difference between these two definitions in my mind is the second definition is a calculated, intended type of experimental or scientific approach to it. So the result is not just haphazard. The first definition, a consequence, effect, or outcome of something, or more simply, the end of an action, is non-thought of.
That can be pretty random, yeah. I was trying to get the difference between the second definition, first half, and second half. I was trying to split it that much.
Right.
Yeah, but that made more sense what you did. Yeah, because like sometimes it's just results, something just happens. But you're talking about actually working on it to create the result with intention, with malice aforethought, with formulas or something, right?
Yes, an item of information obtained. What does obtained mean?
Get it, you create it, you make it happen.
You own it, it's yours. You received it, right? So an item of information obtained by experiment or some other scientific method.
Yeah, but there's a method there, and it's scientific, which, let's make scientific a realistic word, because people are throwing that around when things are anything but scientific, but they start sentences so you're supposed to believe them. Science is just purely knowledge. It's factual. It isn't opinionated things. It's something real. It comes from scio, Latin, meaning knowledge. Bill's checking me.
Yeah, so I think you have half the definition. So
Top of
So
my
it
head,
says,
yeah.
well, no, I think you're right. So it is knowledge, but it's based on or characterized by methods and principles of science, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's systematic and methodical.
Yep.
So it's kind of like science is gravity. We don't need to understand gravity. We just know it's there. It's a law. It's in what they call an axiom. It's a law without explanation. It's just science.
You can see it.
It proves itself because you could pick something up and drop it 1,000,000 times, and it's always going to do the same thing, and it's obvious. It's not. It's just there. It's just evident. You can just see it. That to me is what science is.
Yep.
Right. So it is knowledge, but it's knowledge obtained by actually doing it and experimenting. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the main point here is calculation. By calculation for a favorable outcome. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is the main point here is by calculation for a favorable outcome.
That sounds right.
So with this in mind, I have stumbled upon a new discovery that is a bit shocking and wanted to talk about it today. And that is how goal setting is so dangerous. And even though I'm going to talk about this in this podcast today, I want you to know that after I wrote this podcast, I went another week in my mind, if you would. And podcast number 320 is going to do a much better job. I did 2 podcasts on this, but 320 is a much better job of explaining this, but I'm going to reveal it today. So I think that goal setting is dangerous for rookies in creative real estate. That's what keeps them poor.
That sounds crazy. That sounds crazy. How people keep talking about, you have to have goals. You have to have goals.
It gets them a bunch of failed purposes. So they have a purpose to do whatever, and it doesn't happen. And failed purposes will kill anybody. They'll stop you from reaching. They'll stop you from looking. They'll stop you from going outside of your head. If you have a failed purpose, a failed purpose in your mind, like there's no sense in doing that, kind of like apathy. There's no sense in doing that. I did it last time and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. It's like one of the things that we talk about, in other podcasts. It's like the first barrier of learning is thinking you already know it. Right. So if you have a failed purpose, it's along the same line. You think you already know that it doesn't work.
Yeah, that it, like in a negative way. I already know it won't. Oh boy.
Yeah. So you don't do it. You know what I mean?
It's tough.
So I know prevailing wisdom claims that the best way to achieve what you want in life is gotten by setting goals and actionable goals. But I know when I set goals and focus on them too much, my life always gets worse. Personally. I do much better when I'm flippant and do stuff on the fly. And flippant, you want me to define it or you want to do it? I can do it.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Flippant.
You said it.
Flippant is kind of quick, without much thought. It's just insouciant, just kind of like a fast decision. Let's do this. And that's what I do. I don't think about it a lot of times. It's carefree. That's right. But here's my secret. I began to realize that my results had very little to do with the goals I set. But instead, I noticed my results had everything to do with the systems and the habits that I follow. So I'm going to give you a quick example, which I'm kind of revealing a little bit in the podcast 320. But so a quick example is you and I have set down our goals, right? And then we pound away on them, and we pound away on them, and we pound away on them. And then finally, it's like, you know what, Peter? To hell with this. Let's just get on the phone and talk to some people. And then all of a sudden, we might go 3 months trying to do this or trying to do that or implementing something. We did a bunch of training on multifamilies, right? And then we just decided, we didn't do anything for like 6 months. And then all of a sudden, we're like, you know what? Let's just get back on the phones. It was like one of the biggest things that I ran into that I noticed this was a few years ago before the pandemic. We had all this crazy stuff like we'd sent out all this marketing. This is before the pandemic. And we had these recorded messages, free recorded messages and all that kind of stuff, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally we decided that, like, because we were in my office and we were just answering the phones, and it's like, let's just get rid of all this stuff. Let's just get rid of these online phone numbers, and let's just have them ring to my ring to my office phone, and just have them record a message, and let's just talk to them.
Yep.
And then, like 2 weeks later, we bought a 3-family house. Remember?
Yep.
So, and the guy was pissed at us because we hadn't called him back in 2 weeks.
That's right. What kind of business is this? I called you last week. Why don't you call me back? Jesus, you want to sell the apartments or not?
And we went to basics. So I could be flippant and do things on the fly as long as I stayed within my little system.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what's the difference between system and goals? Right.
Well, you got it. Is that? Oh, you're going. Keep going.
So Scott Adams, which, by the way, I strongly suggest you go on Amazon and check him out. He's actually the cartoonist for Dilbert Comics. And he's got a series of books. I read one years ago by accident. And I haven't read one in a while, but I'm going to after I finish the book I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some amazing books. The dude is really smart. And he's got some like life books. Like one time he was talking about dieting, right? Mm-hmm. And he broke it down so simple. And he was like, look, here's the deal. Food is supposed to give you energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you eat something and a half an hour later you feel lethargic, or you feel lazy, or you feel like you don't want to work, or you ate the wrong food.
Yep.
If you eat the right food and a half hour later you feel energetic, then that's the right food. You know, that's just stop. You know, so he's like, so it's like, you know, so here are some of the things I found that give me energy. And he like, it was not a diet book. It was just by the way, it was about an executive book, right? It was just by the way, it's like, here's what I found helps me get energy.
But that's important. But that's important. He's showing you how to actually pay attention to what's happening, not preconceived notions of what somebody says, what you read on Facebook, like what's actually happening, what actually works. I was through that years ago, experienced the same thing. Absolute, complete energy after eating. No like lunch and then, I feel tired. So I know what he's talking about. It makes a big difference. But he's just being sensible. Like, pay attention. Wake up.
So, by the way, sugar is not included in that.
Yeah, that's what you do if you want to go to sleep. Like, if you want to run around the bedroom and then go to sleep, do that.
So here's what Scott says about goals, right? He says goals are about results you want to achieve. Systems are about the process that leads you to those results.
Mm-hmm.
So goals are good as like a compass, like this is where I want to go. But it's the habits and the systems you use to get the goals that makes the difference. And what happens is, well, anyways, I'm going to keep reading the podcast because otherwise I'll get ahead of myself, which is the difference between the two different definitions I gave you at the beginning of the podcast. So a goal, number one, a goal is a consequence or outcome. Or number two, systems are scientific method in a formula obtained by a calculation. So the first one, the first definition I gave you of results is all about just the consequence or outcome. Like, I want to make $30,000. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
All right. And they think they need to go learn how to do deal structuring, and they need to learn how to do the paperwork, and they need to learn how to talk to people. All that stuff is not important. And I'm going to talk about this in detail in podcast number 320. I don't want to give you a cliffhanger here, but I'm going I'm going to talk about how you can fix this. I'm not going to talk about it today. I'm just talking about what keeps rookies poor. And what keeps them poor is they fall into this this ether or this what is the word I want? Like dreamland of how they're going to get 30 grand and what they're going to do with it. But then they don't know what to do. They don't know the habits they have to have. And I'm going to tell you right now, as loud as I can tell you, as rude as I can tell you, as shocking as I can tell you, there's only one way. There's only one thing you need to do in real estate to make money. Actually, two things. Talk to a seller and make an offer. And if you think it's any more complicated than that, if you think you need to learn how to talk to a seller and you think you need to learn how to make a deal structure, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to tell you that I single-handedly with two partners, and it's me because I am the one that has dreamed it all up, actually have created a system called Creative REI Replay. And I'm not going to get into it now, but that system, I am in the process. I'm very close. We're launching it on September 10th, 2022. And that system is built because we actually put leads in your system. When you sign up with us, we give you leads every day. Every day you get new leads in your system. And I'm in the middle of, right now, I'm with a programmer and a developer in Sean, and we're creating a calculator. And the idea is that when you're talking to a seller, you put in a handful of numbers and it tells you which deal you can do and which deal you can't do. So while you're on the phone with the seller, you put the numbers the seller's giving you, your handful of numbers, and in front of your eyes, you will be able to know which offer to make. Oh yeah, by the way, when it tells you which offer, it's going to have red, green, yellow light, so you know which one to make. And then on that offer page, where because it'll go to that page, like if you want to do a slot deal, on that page, I'm going to put the half a dozen or 8 things you need to cover with the seller to make sure they're ready to do a slot deal. And once you figure out how to do a slot deal, I have expectations to push a button and it sends them a memorandum. And we're in communication with a company right now that does electronic signatures. So while you're on the phone, you can push a button, it goes to their cell phone, and they can sign the memorandum while you're talking to them.
Geez, Bill, with that stuff, you never even have to get out of bed.
That's my point. Wait a minute. It gets better. It gets better because after that, once you know you're doing a slot deal, you go into our training portal, which all these buttons are in Creative REI Replay. You go into our training portal, and you go to the slot deal and you download a checklist and just walk through the checklist of how to do a slot deal. And if you have any questions, there's a bunch of videos in there to show you the different parts of the checklist. And we have support calls every 2 weeks, a live 1-hour call for every 2 weeks. Plus there's support, you can call anytime for support. So I only bring that up because I'm telling you, that's a scientific method.
Oh yeah.
Of how to do creative real estate, right? So the point is the habits that you need are to be able to call and talk to a seller, a motivated seller preferably, and make an offer. Those 2 things will make you a multimillionaire. Okay, but let's go over a few points. I can fully get our listeners' concept or grasp the concept of what I'm talking about. Okay. So number 1, winners and losers have the same goals. Right?
I suppose you're right. Yeah.
Most goals have a lot to do with survivorship. And we tend to hear about the winners or the survivors, not the losers. Right? Mistakenly assume that their ambitions and goals and tenacity got them the result or the outcome. So you think that they won because of their ambition, their goals, and tenacity. Right? But think about this. Every Olympian wants to win a gold medal, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that there's less ambition, tenacity?
Oh, they
For
work
each one of
real hard. All of them work really hard to get where they are.
So do you think their ambitious goals are what got them to win or lose? They all have the same goal. They want to win the gold medal.
Mm.
They all want the same thing. What's the difference between our rookie wanting to make a $30,000 check? Introduce me to a person, especially in real estate, that doesn't want a $30,000 check. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it's $25,000, but they want a check.
Yeah.
Why else would you get into real estate if you don't want a $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 check? Why wouldn't you want that? Who doesn't want that? So we all have the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
So how come some of us get the checks and some of us don't? So that poses the question: if successful or unsuccessful people share the same goals, then it cannot be what differentiates winners and losers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't be the goal.
No, not the goal.
So let's go back to the beginning. Goals are for losers, is what I said, right? Well, we all have this goal. So if the winners have the goal and the losers have the goal, so it can't be goal setting that gets you wealthy. It can't be goal setting that keeps you from being poor. Am I making sense here? Because I feel like I'm just babbling on, saying the same thing over and over again.
You know what it reminds me of? I don't know if you're headed toward this, but it's the last 5 minutes. I keep thinking the old Asian philosophy of there's be, there's do, and there's have. And goals is something you want to have, but do comes before they have. So the question is, well, what kind of doing you're supposed to be doing? And it's certainly not sitting there just dreaming of the goal, attending a podcast and listening to me or you or someone else talk, or reading a book. You know, what kind of do is correct? And I think what you're doing is trying to narrow down the correct things to do and what you shouldn't be worrying about doing. Because, you know, until you've succeeded, you don't really know what you should or shouldn't be doing.
Right.
You know, you really don't know.
Now, don't get me wrong, because goals are good for setting a direction.
Yeah. But you're saying that's not the end all. You can't just like every January people go, I want to blah, 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 blah. But if they don't do certain things, nothing happens.
Right.
If you don't watch what food makes you tired and what food gives you energy, it's not going to do you no good.
It's actually the systems or the habits that make the progress.
But even there, which systems, which habits, you know? And I guess we should ask people like you who've succeeded, because you ask people who've succeeded. When you started this, you didn't just go winging it. You say, who did this correctly? What do they do? And it keeps synthesizing and combining and refining.
I could tell you the number one thing that I have that I've noticed that most don't have. And I can tell you this because I talk to a lot of people, as you know.
Yeah.
And I've come to this conclusion not long ago, to be honest with you. So, failure.
Mm-hmm.
It hangs in people's universes, their heads, around them. It's like failure is like water with a fish. It just encompasses them.
Yeah.
And what I learned, and I actually learned this from Dan Sullivan, who's strategic coach. I was just reading something of his, whimsical, reading something of his. Not that I'm a follower of his or anything. I just read a couple of his books. Said, the only way to get rid of that, when something's hanging around in your head and you have too much attention on it, it won't go away, especially failure, is to turn it into a lesson.
Yeah.
So like, oh my God, I just talked to that person and I just lost the deal. Yep. And that stuff used to bother me, and I would hang around. I lost the deal. I'm a piece of shit. Oh my God, I'm so horrible. I must have did this wrong. I must have did that wrong. I have to go restudy. I got to go figure it out. I can't talk to anybody else until I figure that out.
Yeah.
When really all I need to do is usually just listen to a recording. Half the time I don't even need to do that because you recorded it in your own mind. I just recall the conversation and I think to myself, I could have probably done this. I should have done that. And I turn it into a lesson. And then it goes poof. And it's gone and I go back to work.
No, that makes sense. It's the only thing you can do.
Here lies the heart of the procrastinator. Too many failed purposes, too many problems that got unsolved, and he's trying to protect himself or herself by getting all they need to have before they can do. They need to have all this and have all that and have all this before they can do anything because they're trying to protect their precious little self.
Jeez, they need a bigger sword, a bigger shield, a bigger machine gun. They got to be sitting in a tank. They have a 4-foot brick wall in front of them, and then maybe they'll feel, you can't do that.
So like with the Olympian, right? The motion was there. They had motion, right? The direction was set. It was only when they implemented a system of continual small improvements that they achieved a different outcome. Right? Which, by the way, I was going to say this at the end of the podcast. A good book for this, and a lot of this information comes from this book. It's from James Clear called The Atomic Habit. It's a phenomenal book. The Atomic Habit.
You know, it's funny. You've been mentioning it for a couple of weeks, and you mentioned to me personally the other day. Something popped up on Facebook about like exercise, like how to build and then how to restructure and how to reform and how to really reinforce. So she goes, and I get these ideas from a book called Atomic Habits. Yeah, even for exercise, like little by little, whatever, this the system. But she mentioned it in a video like that, right?
If you're not a reader, that's totally fine. Just go to YouTube and type in James Clear. He's got some really good half-hour, 40-minute talks where he talks about this stuff. I do better with the book, but that's just me. So, right? So it's these little tiny habits that make a difference. Like, for example, Ben Settle, who's a huge mentor of mine for copywriting and emails and book publishing and all that kind of stuff. He gives an example in one of his books that what is his name? Oh my God, I just went blank. Jim Camp. I'm dropping a lot of names here. Jim Camp is the master negotiator. This guy negotiated billion-dollar deals, worked for the FBI, and all that kind of stuff. He was a master negotiator, right? And he talked about this same thing about making improvements in habits. And one of the things he talks about, which Ben Settle soon talked about, because Ben Settle introduced me to Jim Camp, right, was a diet. Right? So I want to lose 50 pounds. So that's the goal, right? You don't concentrate on what's not in your control. So if you had control of the 50 pounds, you wouldn't have it.
Yep.
Right? You wouldn't have gained 50 pounds. So you need to control something that some action that you can do. So something like, well, I could not eat sugar at lunchtime.
Yep. Drink water instead of a soda.
Right. Or get up in the morning or go to the gym 3 days a week. Right. So you concentrate on those things, not the goal. Now, you don't forget the goal. Your goal is the compass.
Yeah.
But you focus on the habits. Like, for example, in real estate, concentrate on who can I call today and talk about their house. You don't even have to try to buy it. Just call them up and say you have a house for sale. I'm interested. Don't even tell them you're an investor. Just tell them you're interested.
Yeah.
And just talk to them. Right? So this brings me to my second point, which is achieving a goal is only a momentary change. Now, this is important. It took me, I'm 58 years old, and it's taken me damn close to 56 years to figure this out. And again, this was on the heels of a few years ago with the phone calls I was telling you about. When we were in my office, you and I were in my office, and this is on the heels of all of that. And I've since, since it's a couple of years later, I've since proven this to myself over and over again. A good example of this is, so what I'm talking about is a momentary change. So a good example of this is having a messy room, like a bedroom.
Yeah.
And then you clean the room up, right?
Yeah.
For now.
Is that what you mean by momentary?
Yeah. But if you maintain the same lazy or sloppy pack rat habits that led to the messy room to begin with, you'll soon have a messy room again.
Okay, that's what you mean by the momentary change. I'm thinking a change, you want to keep doing it, but not necessarily. Like I walk in my neighborhood and I see people who have had nice landscaping done on their property and they don't take care of it.
Right.
It drives me nuts. Like if you're gonna have nice landscaping, don't let that 7-foot weed grow in front of your front door. Yank it, dude. Or just don't do it. Cut everything down.
What made me recognize what you're saying right now is deal structuring. Mm-hmm. So, and this happened with you. It happened with every person that I have trained, almost 100%. Almost. If it's not 100, it's so damn close I can't even think about using another number.
Yeah, what's that?
So you work really hard. You're diligent, which you talk about a lot about, folks, what would it be like if you worked this week and on Friday you didn't get a paycheck? Mm-hmm. The next Friday you didn't get one. And then a month goes by, you don't get a paycheck. And then 2 months goes by. And then 3 months later, you sell your house and you get a big fat paycheck, which pays for all those weeks and then some, but you had to wait. So there's not instant gratification.
Yep.
Right?
Bill, it's like dating a nun. Bill, it's like dating a nun.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That was bad, wasn't it?
Oh my God, Peter. I'm not
sorry.
Hey, terrible. Peter's 70-something years old, so just realize that his definition of dating and yours, if you're listening to us now, might be different. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
He dated back in the 50s.
Definition of nun too.
Yeah, he dated in the 50s, right? In the definition of a nun. That's right. So think of this. Here's what happens. You work, you get a deal. You're like, oh my God, I got a deal. Big celebration. Mm-hmm. Before you close, which is the first error. Then I bring you down, I pop your balloon and like, well, we haven't bought it yet, we haven't closed yet. Because there's a lot of deals that blow up between paperwork sign and closing. Okay? Not a lot, but there's a percentage. Mm-hmm. You actually get the deal. You buy it. You put the money together. We're talking about a rehab right now, right? You get the money, you buy it, you put it together. You start getting contractors, and you start working on this.
Yeah.
Here's what happens every single time. You get consumed with the contractors and the create of building this new house. I'm going to pick colors and the floors, and I want to put siding, and I got to get new windows. So you completely break the affluence. Because the affluence that you had was how you found this seller, and bought the house. The affluence was not fixing the house. The affluence was finding the seller and getting the property.
Yep.
You stop doing that. So now you're going to a 2 or 3 month project. You get the house sold, you make a $30,000 or $40,000 or $20,000 check, whatever it may be, and you're like, yippee, I'm rich.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you wake up and you think, oh, what am I going to do today? I don't have to go to the house. I sold it. I don't have to cut the grass. I don't have to go check on the contractors. I don't have to go to Home Depot. I don't have to do it. I don't have to. And you're like,
now what?
Now what do I do? And now what happens is you spend 3 more months looking for another seller that is going to do this for you again. and you start all over. This is booms and depressions. You know, you're really high, you're really low. You're really high, you're really low. And I find this is what I'm talking about, the momentary win. Right? Goals give you momentary wins. Your goal is to buy a house and make 30 grand. You get the 30 grand and it lasts what, 3 days, maybe a week? And I'm going to tell you, most coaching clients, their first check, have spent it 14 times before they get it. So it doesn't even last a week because they write checks and they pay this and do that and do this and do that. All the things they were going to do with this money, which, by the way, the money is always less than what they thought it was going to be. You thought it was going to be 30 grand and it ended up being 21 grand, or whatever the number is. It's seldom the other way, right? They're momentary pleasure moments, right? But if you have a system in place, and we've talked about this so many times, and your goal is to get up today, and the first thing you do is make your phone calls. I'm going to spend an hour looking for a new seller. Then I'm going to go do the renovation. Right? Or my goal is today is to talk to one new seller, and make an offer, and then go get the windows ordered for the new house, and then go look at another house, make an appointment to go look at another house that I can buy.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. When you do what we're talking about, happiness is not the goal, the accomplishment of the goal. Happiness is overcoming those simple steps along the way. Right? Happiness is achieving these baby steps. Happiness is knowing that at the end of the week, you called every single day and you spoke to 3 sellers a day, and now you have another potential deal to work on. Now, Peter, I'm going to stop talking for a minute because I am obviously different than most, good or bad. My mother's been telling me that since I've been 9 years old. I would like for you to take a minute, not a half an hour, but take a minute and explain to our listeners, when you think you have a deal, like you think you're making calls and you actually think you have a deal. Like, for example, you have one right now. You think you have a deal, right? First of all, explain what I mean by that, and second of all, what does it do for your morale? What does it do for you, your feelings, and your accomplishment? How you feel about accomplishment?
Okay, so specifically and realistically for me, I've been looking for a deal for a while, talking to a lot of not motivated sellers, and it's discouraging. It's annoying, but you just keep doing it. Did some changes in the marketing, what we're doing, and person said yes. Good. Felt better right there. Because, your definition, same one I use, is there isn't just start and stop. I'm going to buy a house. I got the house. There's start, then there's change. Then you got to do this, another change. You got to change this. You got to try this. You got to do that. A lot of little steps along the way. And if the steps go well, don't you feel good? I do. So if the step goes bad, you go, ah. See, maybe if you think of it in reverse, unhappiness is you're going along and then something doesn't work out, like, the windows didn't come. The girl said no to the date tonight. Somebody canceled. Every time that happens, you go, ugh. But the opposite, when something goes your way, I didn't think the windows were going to come in. Good. You feel happy. So I had somebody who said yes. I went and saw the house, signed an option deal. Yes, it felt good. I got a payoff statement. It's $14,000 less than I thought. Yay! Next step is get the key. They moved out. No, they moved out of the house. Yay! Every little step I go, I'm closer, because I know they could stop any second, but I'm getting to the point where not too much to stop me now. Somebody says, here's money for the house, I'll be okay. But, I'm actually staying pretty calm about it, Bill. But every little thing that happens correctly, You feel good. You feel a little happy. Okay, a little happy, a little happy. Just like the opposite of when things don't go well. Maybe you don't notice it, but you should damn notice it. You'll feel happy everything that goes
And that's what
right.
keeps rookies poor, is those failed purposes. That's what I'm talking about. You have a purpose to get this deal done, and then all of a sudden they call you up and say, I changed my mind. And you deflate. The question is, how fast can you inflate yourself and get going? They call that bootstrapping. How fast can you pull your boots up? That's an Army term. You pull your boots up and keep fighting.
Yeah, well, the biggest happy piece on this for me is that the way we're doing the marketing now, what we're working on, actually had 3 possibles. We passed on one because it sucked. The other one's moving. The third one kind of disappeared. I'll have to call him, maybe change his mind, but it's okay because that was 3 in the last few weeks. So if I keep doing what I'm doing, there'll be another one. So the biggest happy for me is that what I'm doing is right, and I'm getting correct flows of people calling me who are motivated. That's the best thing for me, that I think the path I'm on is good. So if somebody says no, it's like, oh, the end of the world, because I have more coming. That's the key. And that's what you're talking about right now. Don't find one deal, do it, and then have 0. That's the balloon deflated fully. So for me, on this current time span, having some flows coming in is the best thing. If I lose one, I won't care. I know I'll get another one.
Exactly. So even though this $30,000 check came in and you feel good, it only solved the temporary problem.
Yep.
Right? The 30 grand doesn't give them freedom for very long.
Yep.
And the result blinded them from documenting the process to get the 30 grand to begin with. See, the goal blinds you from that. You just have this goal, I gotta get the 30 grand, I gotta get the 30 grand. That you're not thinking about the process of getting the 30 grand so you could replicate it and either pass it off or do it again. Right?
If we can only clone ourselves and leave a guy on the phone at home when we go out.
I tell you, the most dangerous place to be in is a screaming affluence. Because now you have to not only do it again, but you have to do just a little bit better. Like, I made $30,000. Now, this month. So this month I got a check for $30,000. Even though it's taking you 4 months to get it, this month on your statistic it says you have $30,000.
Yep.
So now next month you got to get how much money? If you want to get your statistic to go up, you got to get 30,000 plus, 30,100, 31,000, 35,000, right?
Yeah.
So now, if you didn't capture the actual steps or the process or the habits that you in, because it's new, it may not be a habit because you haven't done it 10 times yet, but you do have to document what those steps are, what those processes are.
Yeah, but gee, Bill, how do you do all that work if you also have to do the housework at the same time? How do you keep that going? Gee, Bill, what do we do about that?
Exactly. Hire people.
Okay.
So I was thinking about the other day, because you said something to me a bunch of years ago, how many deals I could handle. And I was like thinking the other day, like, it seems like I wanted to take yesterday off. Actually, I wanted to take Wednesday off. Today's Thursday. I wanted to take Wednesday off. And one of the things I wanted to do is, my wife's telling me I got to go to the doctor for my eye, because it's, as you can see, it's all red. It's like conjunctivitis or something like that. I don't know what it is, but more importantly, I wanted to go visit my grandson. I wanted to do a surprise visit, but I couldn't. You know, I had 2 contracts to write. I had a seller to talk to. I had a meeting for the REI reply stuff. And next thing you know, it was 6:15 or 6:30, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll take the rest of the night off.
Yeah.
Right. The point in saying that is that it was little things. Every day I do little things. This is the reason why you have a to-do list. You do little things. You don't put your goals on there. You have to have goals so you can write your battle plan or your to-do list against it.
Yeah.
Instead of just writing goals like, oh, today I think I'm going to go buy a weed whacker at Home Depot because, oh, maybe I'll start cutting my own grass. No, it's like I need to go to Home Depot and buy sheetrock for the new, pay for the sheetrock and get it shipped to the house because that's, you know what I mean? Because the goal is I want to make 30 grand. There's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I spent way too much time on that. Let's move on. Goals restrict your happiness, which is what we were just talking about. Too often people think once I reach my goal, then I'm happy. When in fact, the problem with the goals first mentality. So the goals first mentality is that you continuously put happiness off until the next milestone. Right. So in other words, you're saying you're not going to be happy until you hit your goal. You're not going to be happy until you hit that 30 minutes.
No, it technically doesn't even work that way. That's actually incorrect. Besides, you only be happy once in a while. You want to be happy once every 3 months? No, the correct meaning, and it really happens if you pay attention, is every time you overcome some obstacle, you'll feel better. It could be just get up, sit in front of your computer, and get some leads and make a phone call. You'll feel better. Then go eat your brownie. But you'll feel better when you do each step, so you can be happy along the way. Matter of fact, what do the Super Bowl guys do when they win the Super Bowl? What do they do next morning? Like, ooh, what do I do now?
Right.
It's called game over. There's no game.
Right.
There's nothing worse in life than having no game.
Right. So we've talked about in the past about how the mind works. I've talked about Maxwell Maltz. Psycho-Cybernetics is a great book. L. Ron Hubbard wrote Dianetics, was a really good book. One of the things that both of them seem to say, I think Hubbard said it best, was production is the basis of morale.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of falls. I mean, it's a book. I mean, Dianetics and Psycho-Cybernetics are books on the human mind, right? How they work and how you feel. I mean, it would make sense. I mean, if you have a car in your driveway and you own the car, it would make sense that you know how to drive it and use it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You were born with a mind, but no handbook on how to use it. It makes sense that you would read some books, whatever they may be, And I tried the psychology books, but they're too much. Freudian was too much about, your whole mind is developed based on sex. Like when you were a child, your sexual experiences. And although I think there's some truth to that, it's not I don't go around thinking about sex all day long.
No, it's incomplete. That's a piece of that, of course.
So psychology is a little
problem,
bit
by the way.
Yeah, that was his problem.
That was it was something he was dealing with, and not everybody.
So I don't think my belief is psychology is not complete, and besides the point, I believe in if I'm sick, I go to the doctor, he gives me a medication, and a week or two later I'm better. I don't prescribe to, and I have family members like that. I don't prescribe to, well, you take this pill for 20 years to sedate yourself so that you can deal in life. That doesn't. What does that do? Why would I want a medicine that's going to heal me? I don't want a medicine that's going to subdue me or make me numb so I can live in society correctly and feel like I'm socially acceptable. I don't want that. You know what I mean? So that's a whole other topic. So, but anyways, the point is production is the basis of morale. Right? So the point is if you have a system first or habits first, mentally it proves that the antidote of your progress and happiness is doing those things.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what's wrong, Peter. I'm going to tell you what's wrong. Probably most of the people listening to us that listen to podcasts, although it's changing these days, are millennials. Because that's what they do. That's how they get information. They don't read. They don't watch YouTube. They don't. I was on a coaching call the other day with another guy that I do coaching with, and the guy went on. One of the students went on. I kid you not, for 15 or 20 minutes, talking about how he's addicted to YouTube and that's why he's not doing deals. He gets up in the morning for an hour and a half and watches YouTube videos. And during the day, he watches YouTube videos. And at night, he watches YouTube videos. And he's having trouble breaking them habit so he can buy houses.
Gee, they got to make a YouTube video on how not to watch YouTube videos.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. You know, like, and that's what he was. This is one of the reasons why I'm writing these podcasts, because I hear these guys in other, it's not my coaching group, it's somebody else's coaching group. And I'm there just helping them. I'm there doing deal structures and stuff like that, bringing my talents to somebody else's coaching group because I made a deal with the guy, right? And I'm quiet because he's talking to the other coach about mindset stuff, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, he's got his habit is to watch YouTube videos. He's addicted to YouTube. And one of the other group members asked him, well, what do you watch? And he was random with like, well, I watch this and I watch that. So the guy that asked him the question, who's a seasoned investor, said to him, why don't you just watch so-and-so's videos? At least you would get real estate advice.
Yeah.
He didn't even do that.
No.
Right? So my point here is, you know, towards the end of the podcast series is, what are your habits? What do you do? I mean, you want to scare yourself? What I did when I first did this, I don't do it nowadays, although I'm back to doing it again because my schedule is too hard. But I actually use Google Calendar. I did this by paper, and I'm hammering my oldest daughter, Jessie, right now to do this as well. Use your Google Calendar, and you put everything you do in the Google Calendar. Even if it's like, you know, I was in the bathroom for half an hour, you know, and just take an inventory of your time.
Oh,
and you do this for a couple weeks, and you'll notice your habits. You'll notice that you can actually make changes. You'll notice that you have more time than you know what to do with. You're just mismanaging.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, enough of that. So, the point that I'm trying to make here is that when you fall in love with the processes rather than the results, you don't have to give yourself permission to be happy while keeping your eye on the mountain, which is the goal. Right? Like you have said to me, and I'm kind of kicking you in the teeth right now, you have told me a bunch of times, like, you have something else you want to do. You have stuff you want to do with the church, and you do real estate to do that. So you're not in love with real estate. You're in love with this other stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, that's backwards. If you were in love with real estate and the process of how to do real estate, then you would have those other things much quicker because you would like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And you would have more passion to do it. Right? So, and I'm not making you wrong. I'm just saying that.
No, it's just, you know, people have their interests, what they like, they don't like, and all that. And some people don't even do what I'm doing. I like it enough. It's not my whole life though. And, you know, you have an interest too, but it's a vehicle for me and I make the most of it.
I am going to shatter that belief in episode number 320. I am going to completely shatter that whole entire idea in episode 320, the next episode. And I'm going to show you the reason why. Scientifically, I'm going to show you the reason why it doesn't work and why it keeps you poor. I'm going to show you. And it's not you necessarily, and I'm not trying to do it. I'm actually doing the podcast for my daughter. We'll do that next week. So today, the point number 4, which is my last point, goals are at odds with long-term progress. Right? So for me, a goal-oriented mind can create a yo-yo effect. Right? Where I work hard for months, but as soon as I cross the finish line, like we were talking about,
mm-hmm.
everything stops. And then you start over again from the complete stop. Right? The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building habits and systems is to continue playing the game. Right? This is the long-term thinking you need it's almost goalless, or as I put it earlier, flippant. So my goal is to have consistent income from real estate. And I have certain numbers. And by the way, my goals are what we consider stretchingly realistic. Mm-hmm. So if I'm making $4,000 a month positive income, I want to make $5,000. If I'm making $5,000, I want to make $7,000. I don't want to say I'm making $4,000 and I need to hit $10,000. That's not real.
Yeah.
That's just wishing. As my father used to say, who's from Pittsburgh, wishing in one hand, shitting in the other. That was his saying.
That's a Pittsburgh thing. Oh, man.
He's got a lot of those. My dad could definitely be like our.
I guess I've never been to Pittsburgh. Whew.
Yeah, he's got some crude things he says. So, so the hat. So like I said, my goal is to. So in your particular case, I have other things I want to do, but those other things I want to do are temporary. Because I'm 58 years old, I still want to be doing real estate in 20 years from now. But what I'm talking about is not doing real estate. It's what's my participation in real estate. Right? Like right now, your participation might be, 5 hours a day or 10 hours a day. I mean, I've got a couple coaching students that's all they do. I mean, I got one coaching client I was just talking about. He's got 9 deals. Oh, by the way, I was talking about that earlier and I got sidetracked. The reason why I felt overwhelmed is because I actually counted. I had 18 deals in the works.
Oh. Yeah.
And not all are all mine. I mean, some of them are students, some of them are mine, some of them are partners, you know what I mean? But I've got about 18 deals in the works. And 15 is usually my limit. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's why I was going back to the calendar. So it's like, if I'm not on my calendar keeping everything organized. But here's the thing, is I feel good because I know every day I'm accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Right. So the purpose of habits and systems is to continue playing the game. So if my game is to my overall game is to be able to do my real estate, we'll say 20 hours a month. Then I can go do things with the church, or I could go do other things. But my passion is that I am being a real estate investor that only works 20 hours a month. So I can do things for the church, and so I can do things with my grandkids, and so I can do things with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's another way. We're going to cover that next week. So it's not about a single goal like a $30,000 check in creative real estate, because I know $30,000 is a lot of money, and I know some people that are probably listening to us either make that much money or not much more than that in an entire year. So if it took you 6 months to make that $30,000, then you're actually up. You're improving. So freedom's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement of your habits and systems that will build your freedom. Right? So it's the systems and habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress, success, and freedom. And if you're a rookie lobster, it'll get you off the rocks. Right?
I like lobster.
So
I gotta go find some rocks.
So if you're poor, right? I mean, a few weeks ago we talked about if you're not rich, then your words aren't rich, right?
Mm.
So if you're not rich, then your habits aren't rich. Right? If you're poor, it's because if you're poor, it's because your habits are poor, right? And you're not doing the right things to get the right results. So, and again, as we're ending off here, I really want to thank James Clear for his book, Atomic Habits, because a lot of the contents today came from his book, or his ideas are in my mind now because I've read the book and it changed a lot of the way I actually operate. And big fat thanks goes to him. I don't want to steal his, plagiarize any of his ideas or his thoughts. It's all his intellectual property. So, okay. So, thanks for being with us again. I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more on episode number 320. Actually, it's a whole different podcast coming at it from a different angle. And I think you're really going to enjoy what episode 320 is going to bring you. Make sure you go into the description and you go into the description and make sure that you check the link and make sure that you click on it, because there's some tools and ideas in there for you to help you with today's podcast. And make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you leave us a review. And again, we record every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. You can go to Facebook or YouTube, and you can catch us there. And then we syndicate, which means we put the podcast on our platforms, all the different platforms, iHeartRadio and Stitcher and Apple and all those different things on Monday morning, so you can catch us on Monday morning. Okay? Thanks for being with us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all your support. Oh, that's the last thing, support. If you have any questions about real estate, creative real estate, you can do one of two things. You can go to WhatsApp, and we have an open free app called Let's Talk Real Estate. So you can join that, and there's a bunch of people in there that help one another with real estate deals, which is a group thing. And if you have a private question or need personal help, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. And at the top right-hand side, there's a support ticket there. You can send a support ticket. They come to me directly. Nobody sees them but me. Okay? So over and out. Again, thanks for all your support. We'll talk to you on episode 320.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.